would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California and member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, folks. Today is Thursday, August 25th, 2016. Once again, we're in the home stretch at the end of the week. I hope everyone's been doing great with their goals and everything's coming together. Kids have started up in school. Everything seems to be coming together. As always, if you'd like to get in contact with me, the best way to do that is to head on over to www.therebelbroker.com. Check out the menu. The option all the way over to the right is Contact the Rebel Broker. Click on that. Use the contact page. Send me any of your ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions, and I'll be happy to respond. Got kind of an interesting story today that segues, or post-segues, I guess, nicely into what we were talking about yesterday relating to new home sales. Rice Media came out with an article discussing the July results. Now, remember, we were talking about the July results relating to new home sales. Well, now we're talking about the July results for existing home sales. I was able to find June for yesterday's show, but I wasn't finding anyone who was putting out July's numbers yesterday. So those came out today. Very interesting, and definitely backs up the theory that we were talking about here on the show yesterday, and maybe even clues us into some things that might be items you want to put in the back of your head if you're trying to decide what kind of real estate investment path you want to follow, whether you want to go with a buy and hold strategy or a buy, hold, and remodel strategy, or a buy, remodel, and sell as quickly as you can strategy. The article starts off discussing the frustratingly low inventory levels in many parts of the country. Existing home sales lost momentum in July and decreased year over year for the first time since November of 2015, according to the National Association of Realtors. Only the West region saw a monthly increase in closings in July. Let's see. Total existing home sales, that's completed transactions that included single-family homes, townhomes, condominiums, and co-ops, fell 3.2% to a seasonally adjusted rate of 5.39 million in July, down from 5.57 in June. For only the second time in the last 21 months, sales are now below 1.6%. A year ago, 5.48 million. And again, we get to hear from Lawrence Yun, one of my favorite people over the National Association of Realtors. He happens to be their chief economist. Says existing sales fell off track in July after steadily climbing the last 4 months. Quote, severely restraining inventory and the tightening grip it's putting on affordability is the primary culprit for the considerable sales slump throughout much of the country last month. According to him, quote, realtors are reporting diminished buyer traffic because of the scarce numbers of affordable homes on the market, and the lack of supply is stifling the efforts of many prospective buyers attempting to purchase while mortgage rates hover at historically low levels. He goes on to say, furthermore, with new condo construction barely budging and currently making up only a small sliver of multifamily construction, sales suffered last month as condo buyers faced even stiffer supply constraints than those looking to purchase a single-family home. So one thing to note about this kind of dynamic, right? Notice he doesn't say anything about the dramatic increase in new home sales. Why? Because the vast majority of the time, realtors do not make any money, or at least the big real estate companies. Every once in a while, you'll find a real estate company that's gotten into an agreement with a new home builder to sell and market the homes. In my experience, at least locally, this may be different in different parts of California or different parts of the country. Typically, if the builder cannot get the homes sold over a certain period of time, they'll sort of back away from it. So, and in this area, these things are tending to sell before they're even built. So, when you're going in and buying from the builder, you're not paying a real estate commission there, right? So you are not contributing to a path that supports the Association of Realtors. So they have much more of an interest in existing home sales than they do in new home sales. So that's something to keep in mind when you're listening to someone talk about these things. Kind of think where their bread is buttered, right? The National Association of Realtors has some very specific jugs of butter that they draw from when it comes time to make their bread, and the new home sales just doesn't fit in. So this is an interesting situation. We're gonna cover a story here in a second that I think dovetails really nicely into helping you make decisions on whether you're gonna, buy and hold or do whatever you're gonna do with a particular investment strategy. But for right now, the clear reality that we're seeing here is, despite the fact that there is an element of higher cost to purchasing a new home, we are seeing that buyers who simply must buy are willing to make that leap, because we've seen, and look at the differences here. That was a dramatic jump in new home sales last month. That's pretty amazing. That shows you how much pent up demand there is. And this particular segment, the existing home segment, just isn't coming close to meeting that demand. So this is another situation where, given that dynamic, and it's not because people don't want those homes. If you are a homeowner in some of these higher demand areas, which pretty much equals almost any metro area in the United States, if you haven't done it, I strongly suggest you check in with someone to get a market analysis done on your home. And you will get dozens of agents willing to do one for free for you. Real estate agents consider that they're in to get into your living room and convince you to work with them. So, but never go with just one, unless you have someone you've worked with in the past who has absolutely earned your trust. I don't want to step in the way of that. But if you aren't in that situation where an agent hasn't proven to you that they're not a complete scumbag, go talk to 4 or 5 of them and have them give you the pitch on what they believe your home is worth. Don't give them any information on what other agents have told them. And then see where things stand. See who's telling you stories and how they're backing those stories up. They should be telling you what they believe it's worth, and then backing that up with solid data. You may be stunned at what your property is worth, and even for those of you who are longtime investors, and particularly if you're more savvy, I'm probably talking to more savvy investors right now because I'm probably talking to someone who has a couple of properties. If you've got a strategy where you're thinking about liquidating sometime in the foreseeable future, within just the next few years, I'm not sure, and we touched on this one a little bit yesterday. I'm not sure that it wouldn't be a good idea, depending on what you're seeing in your local marketplace, if you were to sell a property that you're currently renting and potentially use that to get other properties in areas where you can more affordably acquire them. So in other words, sort of leveraging off of the value of the property that you've got. Now, if you're in a situation where you're absolutely cool with the situation, you've got a very stable property, it's got a great renter in there, they're paying every month, they're treating the property well, you're not getting a lot of headaches out of it, you know what? Then don't worry yourself. I think you've got yourself a great mechanism for you to move forward and continue to have positive cash flow. I would just wonder, though, if you were to figure out where more reasonable opportunities might exist, where you could liquidate one property and potentially acquire 2 and get yourself even more cash flow. It's a possibility. I think it's something worth doing. And in fact, I typically suggest to my investor clients that they put themselves on a 4 or 5 year cycle at the most. And that would be the topmost number. I know some folks who like to do this yearly. I like to evaluate my properties yearly. In fact, this month I'm doing an evaluation of my property in Hawaii. I want to know exactly what I could potentially sell it for. I want to know how much rent growth I expect over the next year. I want to know how much money I'm expecting myself to spend to improve it, to keep it as an attractive property. And that's going to be something I have to do more frequently as an owner of a vacation property rental. But it's things you got to do if you want to continue to be competitive in a marketplace. And I have competition in my marketplace. Where my place is located in Hawaii, the majority, I think, of units that are actually in the building are vacation rentals. I have the advantage of having an end unit, which is obviously rare. There's only 2 end units per floor. And then, of course, there's the top of the building, which is all penthouse-style units, which are just way more expensive as far as per-night costs. But anyway, so being aware of what my competition is, being aware of what they're charging, and also being aware of how the market has changed in that location. So, and as I said, that's something I do every single year. I would suggest that you, depending on the kind of investor you are, I think it makes sense to do a yearly check-in. I usually like to do my yearly check-in a couple of months before the end of the year, just so I have all that data in place and can decide to make a decision for the coming year. And I want to be able to make this decision early enough so I can take advantage of any tax stuff that might be in play. So anyway, just a sort of slightly off-topic suggestion for anyone out there who is holding properties now and really doesn't have a plan. You've just sort of acquired it and you've just sort of been pushing forward without really analyzing what's going on with that property. So anyway, basically the story kind of validates what we were talking about yesterday. I wanted to point that out and wanted to show that the demand is still absolutely out there, and where people are finding a solution to their need is in these new homes that are being built, which I think presents an interesting opportunity for folks who currently hold properties in areas where this dynamic is going on. I honestly believe that we're in a something has got to give scenario. And there's another article here about something else monumentally stupid that's being done by some county in terms of discouraging building. I'm not sure if I put that one aside. I might do that one in a later show. But while there are lots of those things going on, you should be aware of what's going on in your communities. If there's lots more stuff coming online, or there's big shifts happening in building, and you're going to notice it, it's something we'll probably talk about on the show, simply because the amount of building that would need to go on to actually address demand in most metro areas is pretty gigantic. It would represent a huge uptick in the amount of construction going on. But I honestly think that something has got to give over the next couple of years, and when it does, it's going to soften prices probably in your marketplace. So you may find yourself in a situation, depending on what market you're in, where your top dollar, your best return on investment and best utility of your money, right? Because I think when it all comes down to it, we just want to know, where can I put my money where it works the hardest for me, right? If I've got, and let's use California numbers, because that's where I am, and all of us, I think, would love to be able to just say these numbers. Let's say you've got a house that's worth $1 million, and you owe $500,000 on it. So you can liquidate that home and walk away with probably, after everything, probably close to $400,000. So what could you do with $400,000? Now, let's pretend that you had a positive cash flow per month on that house. Once you did insurance and taxes and figured out your payment and all that other kind of wonderful stuff, you had positive cash flow of, say, $500 to $700 a month, because you'd been working on that loan for a while. So the loan amount that it was based on was actually a little bit higher than, say, that $500,000, and that's a normal number. That tends to be a pretty average number that I see for folks who hold properties in that price range. They typically acquired those homes for about $700,000 to $800,000, and they've bought down the loan a bit from there. And normally, when I'm doing the math for them, I'm seeing them in this area getting a positive cash flow of $500 to $700. If you can figure out an equation where you maintain even that exact amount, but you can spread it between two properties, that for me is a more stable investment environment for you. You can think of it, it's not diversifying in terms of putting your money into different types of investments, but it's diversifying in terms of putting your money into at least two separate properties, so that if one of your holdings, if you only have one holding and your holding goes vacant, you're making zero money per month, right? No dollars at all. If you own two properties and one goes vacant, well, then only 50% of your monthly income is cut, right? Until you can find a new tenant. So I think that value there, that sort of backstop slight insurance policy that you get from being able to do that, I think in and of itself is worth it. So even if you were to get exactly the same monthly positive cash flow, I think it's still worth it by putting it into two different properties versus having it all in one property. So just things to consider there. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump into what I think is a semi-critical. It's one of those things I think that needs to jump to the top 10 list of things you need to be thinking about if you're going to be an investor, in terms of the utility of your property, desirability of your property. And I think this applies whether you're flipping or renting in a lot of cases. So stay right there. We'll be back in a minute with more on that. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're going to hit on an interesting topic here, something we have brushed up against a couple of times, I think, over the last couple of years. It's the idea of multi-generational living. We've talked about it before as sort of a corner case, right? Maybe not something that is huge or something that should play a gigantic part in your investment strategy, unless you're involved in a community where that tends to be more common. But what we're finding is it's becoming more and more common. Recent statistics say that the number and share of Americans living in multi-generational family households has continued to rise, even though the Great Recession is now in the rearview mirror. And that's according to a Pew Research Center study. And I'll be honest, I thought that this multi-generational thing would likely dwindle. It would likely decline as we exited from the downturn. But the exact opposite has happened, and it's affected by almost the exact opposite of what brought it on. So folks having to leave their homes because values had dropped so much that it made sense for them to abandon their homes, go into foreclosure. The home values were down so low. Now everything is up so high, folks can't recover from that. I think the transition happened so quickly that going from living with your parents or parents living with you because of a dramatic hit to their personal economy, ended up getting held on to because they actually didn't have enough time to sort of recoup, and then solve the problem before real estate prices went nuts in most metro areas. Now, in 2014, a record 60.6 million people, or 19% of the U.S. population, lived with multiple generations under one roof. According to this article, the data also shows that multi-generational family living, quote, defined as a household that includes two or more adult generations or one that includes grandparents and grandchildren, is not just growing among certain populations. Now, this is another thing that's come up. There's, from an ethnic standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, there are plenty of folks from around the world who come to the United States and continue to embrace the idea of a multi-generational home. It's very common in a lot of cultures. Still never represented a huge percentage of everybody, but now we're finding that this is now becoming part of sort of the American culture, out of necessity as much as anything else. It's not a thing that you can really lay at the feet of any ethnic group or anything like that. Whereas in the past, that was pretty much where you saw it dominate. You saw particularly, I know that in my personal business, I've seen a lot of folks from a lot of different cultures in Asia that are very much multinational. It's very normal for the family structure to include mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, grandkids all living in the same home. And that was fine, but now necessity has sort of pushed it out. It's sort of broadened all the different groups that are involved now. Growing among nearly all U.S. racial groups, as well as Hispanics, among all age groups and among both men and women, according to this data. That's up 18% in 2012 and 17% in 2009. So it's crossing all of those various lines. In recent years, more data on this one. Quoting here, in recent years, young adults have been the age group most likely to live in multi-generational households. However, largely a factor of boomerang kids returning to live at home after college or staying at home instead of going away to college. But the other group, and this is what's particularly interesting to note, is Americans ages 55 to 64, 23% in 2014, and 65 and older, 21%. The rise in multi-generational living among these older Americans is one reason why fewer now live alone than did in 1990. They go on to say that the trend of baby boomers and retirees moving in with their adult children is a growing trend being seen across the country. Over the next 40 years, the 65-plus population will reach 92 million who'd rather live with us than move into assisted living. And that's according to House Logic. So how do we face this, right? One of the things we do, whether we consciously realize this or not, when we're getting into real estate investment, we are satisfying a need, right? We're creating a product to fit a need. And whether you are buying and flipping or whether you are buying and renting, by having the facilities in the home to allow for that, you're just increasing the likelihood that you're going to rent that property to someone who might have some of those specialized needs. Now, in addition, I find in general, and because let's try to look at this from all standpoints, even if someone doesn't necessarily have a demand right now for a property with some of these features, I tend to find that buyers acknowledge them and like them when they see them in a property. And I'm talking specifically about having some area that could easily serve as a separate living area for someone else. And it crosses a variety of lines. It satisfies the idea of someone thinking, well, this could be an income suite. I could rent this to someone else. In addition to satisfying that need, my mom, she's getting on in years. She's had a hip problem. She has trouble with stairs, et cetera, et cetera. These are things that also something like that would solve for them. So you're not only getting this really growing segment of the consuming community who need a piece of real estate to live on, in terms of having a multi-generational home, but you're also satisfying, I believe, the continuing to grow need of folks who might want to say, if it really comes down to it and things get tough, we can always rent that unit, right? I get that a lot. And even with the folks that I'm showing right now that I was showing townhomes to without a whole lot of space, every once in a while, they'd say, if we put up a wall just right here, we could create this space for someone and we could actually rent that out. So, and it's something that comes up more frequently without me even suggesting it. So it's clearly on the mind of more people I'm talking to. And clearly it's also on the mind of more folks who are looking forward to the possibility of needing to take care of their parents or maybe even their grandchildren or maybe even their children if they're about to finish college. So what do we do there? In terms of how to prepare for that or how to be in a position where we can take advantage of this shift in potential demand, it starts with the acquisition part. One way to go is something that we've discussed previously, where you look for properties that might satisfy a lot of your investment criteria, but have a larger lot size, so that if you really wanted to, you could add on to that property without building straight up. You could add to the footprint of the property without having to incur the costs of creating a second floor. Adding a second floor to a home is a little bit more costly, so it's not always a great way to go, and can often require an awful lot of reinforcement of that first floor. So usually if you can find something that's already got a large lot where you can add on to the home and stay within the offsets for permitting purposes, that's usually your most cost-effective way to achieve this if the home doesn't already have that stuff built into it. But it is one of those things you have to budget for. You have to calculate what it's going to cost. Another way to go is to find homes that lends itself to the possibility within the footprint. Normally, when I am looking at properties, you're going to be having to talk about properties that are 4 bedrooms or more, where there is, because of the way the home's laid out, a way to sort of sequester off that 4th bedroom and hopefully a bathroom, so that it's like a separate living unit. And there's a few strategies here. Some of them don't apply to my marketplace because I never see this stuff. But let's kind of cover this renovation idea. Some of the multi-generational remodeling strategies are finishing the basement if you have one. Now, clearly, I'm a California person. I know there are some basements in California. I can't really think of a house that has had a basement where we knew it was there when the house was bought. In fact, I think I came across a quote-unquote basement once that was actually a bomb shelter that was under a house, and the previous owners didn't know about it, and my buyers only found out about it because they were remodeling the home, and after ripping up several layers of flooring, found a hatch ultimately under everything. So that's it. That's the extent of my except for in Santa Cruz. That's right. There was a basement in a house in Santa Cruz back about 15 years ago. So they are out there up here, but they're very uncommon. But I know in some other areas they are far more common. So it's something where you can finish those things off and turn that into a income suite / multi-generational option. Here's some things to think about if you're doing that, which might be a bigger deal. It's going to depend on your overall strategy, but I'm going to suggest these are good things to do and decide on early, because if you decide later to do them, it costs much more to get it done. First, invest in soundproofing between the walls. Normally on interior walls, there's no real soundproofing. There's really nothing between the walls other than airspace. So if you know that you are going to want to get this multi-generational thing going, as part of your remodeling strategy, whatever area you plan to sequester off as that second unit or as that in-law unit or as that income suite, you want to put soundproofing in the walls to just make it so that that's sane for everyone, whether you're the person who makes noise or whether your family members are the ones who make noise, or if you do end up renting it, if your renters are the ones who make noise, having that insulation in there, that soundproofing is going to be a big one for you. Now, next, when you're making these sorts of things, and if you're in the process of doing it as a renovation, keep in mind stairs. When you're talking about multi-generational homes and being accommodating to that kind of lifestyle, you really need to think about what stairs are involved. And if you have a multi-level home, you're going to want to make sure you've got a full bathroom on the bottom floor, and you're really going to want to try to make sure that whatever room you're putting aside as the bedroom for the older person in this equation, or even the person who is, even the income suite idea, you want to be able to provide external access to their space, and you want to do it without stairs. So try to put together a plan that embraces those two ideas. One, if you're trying to rent a space that's going to be independent from the space where you and your family lives as an income suite idea, well, you want them to have another front door. You want them to be able to go around the side and get into their own place without walking through your home to get into their home. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind. The second thing is obviously they're going to need a bathroom. So if you're going to add a bathroom, do that on the first floor. Make it a full bath. And you're going to want to make sure that it is as accessible as possible. So make sure that it's wheelchair accessible. Make sure it's got those extra handrails just in case. And no one's going to get upset. For instance, if you're thinking about renting this as an income suite, no one who looks at that bathroom as a potential rental, regardless of their age, is going to see handles or safety bars as, oh, well, I don't want to rent this because it's got safety bars in the bathroom. So don't be thinking that's something that works against you when you're trying to rent it when you didn't end up having your parents or your grandparents move into the house with you. Next, add that second, and the thing on this list is the same thing I just said about adding a second entrance. You want to make sure that they feel like they can come and go as they please, whether they're a renter or whether they're a family member. It just helps to make things private. Now, the next thing that they talk about here in this article, I think that bears a little mentioning, is searching for the new home. And you're going to use the same sort of a strategy. What's interesting is that a lot of new homes are actually kind of built with this in mind. Now, I've seen a couple of floor plans where just looking at the layout, you think, you know what, that would be an ideal income suite, or this would be a great thing for in-law quarters or something like that. You're not seeing that you're getting a big boost in square footage with these homes, but it does seem that buyers are kind of getting the idea of this multi-generational household or this potential income suite household. So when you're buying if you want something you want to do, and you're buying a new home, try to evaluate it the same way you would an existing home in terms of recognizing what parts of the home would work for achieving this goal of creating this separate space for either a multi-generational situation or an income situation. Now, just to sort of reaffirm how much more common this is becoming, 44% of new home shoppers say they want to accommodate their aging parents at some point. So that's a huge chunk, right? So if you're someone who's shopping for a home as an investment, whether it's a new home or not is really immaterial. It's all about what you can do with the floor plan. But let's say you're remodeling. a home, you're going to do that flipping thing, you want to be adding these features. And even if you're buying a home that you're then going to rent, being able to point out the applicability of this, I think, adds value to your home potentially, when it can have something you can claim to be in-law quarters. So if you're someone who's doing the flipping thing, absolutely, as part of your strategy, you should at least take it as far along the path you feel financially comfortable to do it, in terms of creating a layout that lends itself to being separated off as a separate living area. And the great thing there is you find yourself being able to appeal to this new group, this growing group of potential buyers, 44% and rising, who at least in their heads are entertaining this idea that they need to account for having a family member move in. And then the other, I think, smart group of folks who are potential buyers, who are interested in having a backup plan in case money starts getting tight, and want to have the alternative of potentially renting out a portion of their house to someone if they ever needed to do that. So keep that in mind. I think those are features that those are wow features. Let me, when I'm showing a house to someone and I recognize things like this, I absolutely point them out. I have buyers who come to me and want these kinds of things. They'd love to have an in-law quarters. They love to have all this other kind of stuff. And we don't often exclude homes based on that. We don't put into the search in-law quarters, because 9 times out of 10, the real estate agent who's listed it doesn't recognize the potential. So you kind of have to spot that potential yourself. But by having it in there, and if you have it if you're trying to sell it or you're trying to rent it, whatever you're trying to do with it, you mention those sorts of features, you're going to get way more attention than anyone else out there who's trying to market that property, whether it's for sale or for rent or whatever else. One thing that's interesting here, new home builders, and this is quoting the article again here, have been talking about this for a while. Now, we've mentioned on this show some builders who have absolutely gotten onto this bandwagon. They're building in multi-generational living features in communities all across the country. If you look at Lennar's Next Gen home, it offers a home within a home with a private suite featuring a living area, kitchenette, washer, dryer, bedroom, and bathroom, all accessed by its own entrance. And that's ridiculously smart. I think builders that are doing this kind of stuff are absolutely filling a need that's going to be in demand, not just by those folks who want to find a place for grandma or grandpa, but who are also want that backup plan of potential investment income or income from a renter. Now, of course, I'm going to have links to all the articles we discussed today. I think these are some great tactics to add onto your strategy. The ability to squeeze more money out of whatever property you've got should always be something we're considering, always something we're trying to bounce around in the back of our heads. How can I make this from two sides, right? You want to think of it from the standpoint of how can I make this generate more income for me on a month-to-month basis, and how can I add to this property so it's more desirable? And strategies like this are one of those things that achieves both things. Even if you were to buy a home like this and decide you're going to rent both chunks of it, that's a great thing for you. It doesn't mean that you'll probably have to rent the larger segment for slightly less money because it has a tenant attached to it. Yeah, maybe so. But the amount of money you're going to make off of that second unit is going to really more than offset whatever loss you might get from reducing the amount of rent you're charging for the rest of the home. But where's the downside to that? It may be something that is technically you can rent for a little bit less, but then you're able to rent to folks whose budget fits in better with the amount of money you're renting. So you're providing a very valuable service to the community of folks looking for homes in your area. So it's a win-win for everybody, and it's a great way for you to make your real estate investments that much more secure. All right, folks. Thanks again for making this show a daily part of your routine. I truly appreciate it. And as always, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to y'all next time.